In the middle of a royal hall, with elders watching and lamps burning low, a woman asks one question, and the whole room goes still. Not because no one hears her, because everyone hears her, and no one, not even the great ones, can bring themselves to answer. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're in Panchala, in King Drupada's city, where the heat sits on the courtyards like a heavy shawl. Even the stones feel warm beneath your feet. There's a smell in the air that clings to your hair and skin. Ghee, sandalwood, crushed flowers, and that dry, sharp edge of smoke. The kind that says, the fire has been hungry for a long time. You follow the sound before you see it. Chanting, layered voices, the steady rise and fall of Vedic syllables, like a river you can't step out of. And then you reach the sacrificial ground. It's bright here, brighter than the sun feels at midday, because the fire is doing what fire does best, making its own world. The altar is built with care, brick by brick, measured and aligned. Priests in clean cloth move with practiced precision. Their hands are quick, their faces calm, like men who have learned to stand beside a god and not flinch. You can hear the crackle as offerings meet flame. Ghee hisses when it hits, herbs release their sweetness. A breeze passes, and the smoke changes direction, and for a moment you taste it on your tongue. Bitter, fragrant, alive. Drupada is here. You see him through the drifting haze, seated with the weight of a king who has slept too little. He's surrounded by attendants, but he still looks alone. That's how vows can make you. He has prayed with a stubbornness that doesn't soften. He has poured wealth into this rite, like water into sand. He wants a son shaped for one purpose, a child who will one day stand against the man who humiliated him. Royal life has its luxuries, yes. It also has long memories. The fire leaps higher, as if it has heard its name. The chanting tightens. The priest's voices sharpen, more focused now, like an arrow being nocked. You feel the air thicken, and it isn't only the heat, it's anticipation. Around you, people shift their weight and pretend they aren't nervous. No one wants to be the first to look startled at a sacrifice, especially not in front of a king, especially not in front of priests who can recite the sky into place. Someone nearby whispers that this is no ordinary rite. You almost laugh because of course it isn't. In a palace, even the cooking fires have politics. This one just happens to have mantras. The offerings keep coming: grain, clarified butter, flowers, precious things that vanish into flame like they were always meant to be smoke. The fire answers, it roars, not like an animal, more like a doorway opening. And you feel it then. Something is about to arrive. Not be born in the usual way, arrive. The priests keep chanting, and the sound begins to feel like it's holding the air up, like without those syllables, the sky might sink closer to the ground. The heat presses against your cheeks. Your eyes sting. You blink, and through the shimmer, you see movement inside the flames. At first, it's only a shape, a suggestion. Then it's clear. A figure. A man steps out first, fully formed, already wearing the look of someone meant for command. His posture is straight, as if he has never known hesitation. His eyes are bright with a kind of clean purpose. People gasp, but it's the polite kind of gasp, the kind that says, yes, this is astonishing, but we will keep our composure because we are in a royal courtyard and someone might be watching. You hear a few murmurs ripple through the crowd. This is the prince Drupada begged for. This is the answer to a prayer sharpened into a weapon. And the fire does not quiet. It flares again, hotter, higher, as if that first arrival was only the beginning. The priest's chanting steadies, and now you feel the rhythm of it in your ribs. The smoke curls upward in slow ribbons. The air smells of jasmine tossed too close to flame. And then, another presence. A second figure moves within the fire. This time, the courtyard forgets to breathe. She steps out like someone walking from one room to another, unhurried, unafraid. A young woman, fully grown, the flames sliding off her like water. Her skin catches the firelight and makes it look softer. Her hair is dark, heavy, and it seems to hold its own shadow even here. Her eyes, wide, steady, take in the faces around her as if she's counting them without moving her lips. You realize your hands have gone still at your sides because this is not how the world usually works. Women are born behind curtains with midwives and warm water, with whispers and cloth and the relief of first cries. This woman is born where offerings vanish, where vows are fed, where smoke carries prayers upward like messages. She stands, and the whole courtyard rearranges itself around her without anyone taking a step. The king's attendants stare, the nobles stare. Even the priests blink like they're trying to remember if they're allowed to look amazed. You catch a small, absurd thought. Someone is going to have to explain her arrival to the palace servants later. Imagine being the poor person whose job is to keep a birth ledger. Cause of birth, fire. Mother, sacrifice. Midwife, an altar. Good luck with that. Drupada rises. His face changes in a way you can't quite name. Relief, yes. Triumph, yes. But also something else, like a man realizing that when you ask the gods for a storm, you don't get to choose where the lightning lands. The priests proclaim names into the air, sealing them like blessings. The son is Drishtadyumna, the daughter is Draupadi, and when that name is spoken, it seems to settle on her shoulders as naturally as her own breath. She does not look confused. She does not look shy. She looks like someone who has already heard the reason she was summoned into the world. Around you, people begin to exhale again, as if the courtyard has decided the miracle is now official and therefore safe to react to. Someone offers cloth. Someone offers water. Someone offers flowers. But Draupadi stands as she is, as if she has stepped out carrying her own dignity, pre-wrapped, no need for assistance. You watch her gaze move over the gathering, kings with their rings, priests with their sacred threads, soldiers with their hands resting near hilts out of habit. So many men, so many rules, so many eyes that measure women the way merchants measure gold, and you feel, without anyone saying it, that she is not going to be easy for them, not because she's loud, because she's awake. The smoke keeps rising, the chanting loosens, turning gentle again, like a river after rapids. But the air stays charged, because you can sense the long road unspooling from this moment, a hall filled with perfume and pride, where a bow will wait like a test meant to break egos. 5 brothers moving through crowds in disguise, trying to look like ordinary men while carrying extraordinary fate on their backs. A palace made of illusions, where someone will step wrong and feel shame burn hotter than any flame. A dice hall where laughter will sour. An assembly where silence will spread like oil across water. And in that assembly, much later, Draupadi will stand again. Only this time, it won't be fire around her. It will be people. It will be law twisted into a knot. It will be eyes turned away. And she will ask her impossible question, the one that makes kings swallow their tongues. Was I one or not? She will demand. Not as a plea, as a blade. But tonight, you're still here at the beginning, in Drupada's courtyard, with smoke in your hair and warmth on your face. You're watching a woman born from flame, not to be soothed into acceptance, not to be trained into silence. She has stepped into the world the way sparks leap upward, quick, bright, refusing to fall politely. The fire behind her settles into a steady glow. The priests lower their voices. The crowd begins to move again, as if motion can make this feel normal. But you can't shake the feeling that the ground under Panchala has shifted. Because some arrivals are like that. Quiet feet, loud consequences. And Draupadi, standing in the firelight, already feels like the kind of consequence the world will spend years trying, foolishly, to ignore. The fire that made her has barely cooled. Already, the world is deciding her fate without asking. Morning comes sharp and bright over Panchala. The palace that smelled of smoke last night now smells of rosewater, warm ghee, and freshly scrubbed stone. Servants rush with brass pots, splashing the courtyards clean. Garlands are looped on pillars so quickly you'd think the flowers grew there overnight. And somewhere inside all that hurry, Draupadi is being dressed. Not in the way a girl is dressed for comfort, in the way a kingdom dresses an answer. You can almost feel the weight of it as you follow the stream of guests toward the great hall. Kings and princes pour through the gates, entourages spilling like river water. There's the clink of jewelry, the soft slap of sandals, the low hum of men trying to sound relaxed while their throats are tight. This isn't just a gathering, it's a storm with perfume. The Swayamvara hall opens like the inside of a jeweled shell. Bright cloth, banners hang from beams, incense coils curl smoke into slow ribbons, and the air is so thick with sandalwood and jasmine that it feels soft against your face. You're standing near the edge of the crowd, and you can smell the nervous sweat under the king's expensive oils. They've traveled for months for this. Some have crossed rivers that ate whole carts. Some have slept on cold ground with their crowns wrapped in cloth like any other traveler. Some have brought armies and gifts and poets, as if romance is something you can win by arriving loudly enough. They all look toward the center, because the center holds the trap. An enormous bow rests there, dark and heavy, as if it was carved from the stubborn heart of a mountain. It doesn't look like a weapon meant for a human hand. It looks like a challenge meant to bruise pride. And above it, hanging from a contraption of poles and wheels, a fish spins in circles. Below the fish sits a shallow vessel of water, so still it reflects the entire hall like a second world. The task is simple, they said. Simple the way a cliff is simple. Lift the bow, string it. Aim not at the fish itself, but at its reflection in the water, and strike the eye. Around you, people whisper the rules again and again, like repeating them will make them easier. Someone laughs too loudly, and you can hear the thinness of it. In the front rows, Drupada sits like a man who has waited a long time for this day and doesn't trust it to go smoothly. Beside him stands Drishtadyumna, born of the same fire as his sister, eyes scanning the hall with the calm of someone who expects trouble and doesn't mind it. And then there is Draupadi. She sits slightly apart, as if the seat itself knows not to touch her too closely. Her hair is oiled and braided, her ornaments bright, her garland fresh enough to still hold a little coolness from morning shade. But the most unsettling thing is her steadiness. All these men have come to claim her, and she watches them the way fire watches dry grass, without blinking. The first prince steps forward. He is tall, proud, gold shining at his throat and wrists. He walks like the ground owes him respect. His friends shout encouragement, and the hall answers with a roar of approval. He grips the bow, and immediately you see it, the smallest tremble in his arms. The bow doesn't budge. His jaw tightens. He tries again, pulling with all the stubborn strength he can summon in front of 1,000 witnesses. The bow stays where it is, like it's laughing without sound. He gives up with a smile that tries to pretend he meant to do that. He steps back, and the hall coughs politely. Another prince comes, then another. One manages to lift the bow, just barely, and the crowd surges forward in excitement, like children watching a miracle. He tries to string it. The string snaps from his grip and whips through the air with a sharp twang. Not enough to harm him, but enough to sting his pride. He stumbles, recovers, and acts as if he's simply adjusting. You can feel the tension rising, hot as midday sun. A third man tries. He strains, face reddening. His attendants mutter prayers under their breath. He finally gets the bow raised, but the fish above keeps turning and turning, smug in its spinning. He aims at the reflection. He releases. The arrow flashes upward and strikes the mechanism instead, making the fish jerk and wobble. The hall erupts in laughter that tries to sound respectful and fails completely. The prince's smile looks like it hurts. So it goes. Men who command armies, men who have won battles, men who have never been told no by anything smaller than a god. One by one, they walk up to that bow and learn what it feels like to be ordinary. You start to notice small things, the way fingers flex nervously before gripping the bow, the way jewel-heavy hands suddenly look clumsy, the way some kings begin to stare a little too hard at Draupadi, as if her face itself is responsible for their humiliation. And in the middle of it all, the fish keeps spinning, patient, unimpressed. At one point, a king steps forward with enough swagger to fill the hall. He's famous, radiant in armor, and the murmurs ripple. Karna. Even standing still, he looks like a drawn bowstring, taut, ready. For a moment, the air shifts. A prince like that doesn't usually lose. He moves toward the bow with quiet confidence, and you can feel hundreds of hearts leaning forward. But before his hand closes around the wood, Draupadi's gaze hardens. She makes her refusal clear without raising her voice. She will not choose him. Not with his birth, not with the name others sneer behind his back. Not today. It's like a pot of milk boiling over, sudden, messy, impossible to ignore. Karna stops. He doesn't plead. He doesn't soften. He simply turns away. And the insult hangs in the air behind him like smoke you can't wave off. Some men look relieved because one dangerous rival has been removed. Some look uneasy because they've seen what kind of pride just got stepped on. And still, the fish spins. Time passes in a blur of failed attempts and strained smiles. The hall grows warmer. Incense thickens. The petals on garlands start to wilt slightly at the edges. You're still standing there, and your own skin feels lightly damp from the press of bodies and the heat of so many torches. And then, like a shift in wind, you notice them. 5 men near the back, plainly dressed, Brahmin robes, simple cloth, nothing jeweled, nothing loud, but the way they stand is wrong for ordinary men. Too balanced, too alert, like lions wearing woven grass. One of them, broad-shouldered, heavy in the chest, keeps his hands carefully folded, but you can feel the strength in him like a drumbeat under fabric. Another is leaner, quieter, his eyes taking in angles and distances the way an archer's eyes do. They look like travelers. They look like students. They look like trouble disguised as humility. The kings in front keep failing, and impatience starts to buzz. Some mutter that Drupada has set an impossible task. Some complain that this is an insult to royalty. A few begin to glance at the exits, already imagining the story they'll tell back home, how the bow was unfair, how the fish was rigged, how fate was unkind. Then one of the Brahmins steps forward. The crowd reacts with offended laughter at first. A Brahmin, trying a Kshatriya challenge. It feels like a joke someone told badly. But the man keeps walking, calm, unhurried. He doesn't ask permission. He doesn't bow and retreat. He simply approaches the bow as if he has been invited by something older than kings. You can hear the rustle of silk as people shift to get a better look. You can smell the sharp tang of anticipation like cut limes. Drishtadyumna watches from beside the throne, eyes narrowing. Draupadi's head tilts slightly, and you see it. Attention, sudden and bright. The Brahmin stops before the bow. He loosens his shoulders the way someone loosens a knot in rope. He rolls his fingers once, like shaking off water. Then he reaches down and lifts the bow, not easily. No, it still has weight, still demands respect. But he lifts it with control, with the clean economy of a man who knows his own body. A hush drops over the hall so fast it feels like someone closed a door. He sets his foot, braces, and strings it. The bow bends, the string draws tight, and the sound is deep and thrumming, like a temple bell struck in the distance. You can feel it in your ribs. He doesn't look up at the fish, not directly. He looks down at the water. The reflection shows the fish spinning, 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 and the Brahmin's eyes track it as if he's watching the moon travel through a window. His hand draws an arrow. For a moment, everything slows. The smoke from incense seems to hang. The banners stop fluttering. The hall holds its breath. You're right there with everyone else, and you realize you're holding your breath too, as if air might spoil the aim. The arrow releases. It flies so cleanly it barely makes a sound, just a soft hiss through warm air. It strikes. The fish jolts. The eye is pierced, and for one heartbeat, there is perfect silence. Then the hall explodes. Shouts, disbelief, laughter, outrage, everything crashes together. Some kings leap to their feet. Some stare as if their eyes are lying to them. A few look at Drupada as if he must have planned this. Draupadi rises. The garland in her hands looks suddenly heavier, like a destiny you can't pretend is just flowers. She walks forward through the uproar, steps careful on the polished floor. Her anklets chime faintly under the roar, a small sound that somehow cuts through. She reaches the Brahmin, and she places the garland around his neck. A simple act, a violent act in its own way, because it turns every powerful man in the hall into a rejected man. You see the flash of anger ripple across faces like heat lightning. Some kings grip their swords, others hiss to their attendants. Pride has a very short temper when it's embarrassed in public. The Brahmin, Arjuna, though no one here is supposed to know it, doesn't gloat. He doesn't raise his arms in victory. He simply stands with Draupadi beside him, garlanded, as if destiny has set his feet on this exact spot and he won't step away from it. And then the shouting turns sharp. Who is he? Who is this Brahmin who strings a bow no king could handle? Who is this stranger who has just taken Drupada's daughter in front of all the world? The air shifts from celebration to danger. Men press forward, guards tighten formation. Drupada's court bristles like a hedgehog. You can feel it in your own skin. This is the moment when a ceremony can become a brawl, when honor becomes an excuse for chaos. The broad-shouldered Brahmin steps closer. Bhima, even disguised, he has the kind of presence that makes people unconsciously give him space. He doesn't threaten with words. He threatens by existing, by standing there like a wall that could decide to move. The other brothers gather too, Nakula and Sahadeva, quiet as shadows. Yudhishthira, composed, watching everything with a steady gaze, and Arjuna at the center, garlanded, calm. A prince lunges forward first, unable to bear the insult. The crowd surges, and suddenly it's no longer a neat hall of ceremony. It's a living thing, pushing and swaying. Jewelry clatters, silk tears somewhere. A sandal gets lost and trampled. Arjuna moves, not with the frantic motion of panic, but with the smooth certainty of someone who has lived his whole life in the space between danger and control. He and Bhima stand back to back, and you realize what the kings have just done. They have cornered themselves against two men who are very good at corners. Arrows appear in Arjuna's hands like they were hiding there all along. He doesn't loose them to end lives. He sends them to break pride, to knock weapons aside, to pin cloth and straps, to make attackers stumble and look foolish. Bhima, meanwhile, does what Bhima does. He grabs the nearest furious prince and simply moves him out of the way, like shifting an inconvenient piece of furniture. The man's feet leave the ground for a moment, and he lands in a heap of offended dignity. There's a strange, almost comic beat in it, the way someone can travel through the air and still insist they meant to do that. But it doesn't stay funny. More men come, driven by humiliation. Drishtadyumna signals, and Drupada's guards begin to force space, trying to keep the ceremony from collapsing into disaster. The hall rings with shouted names and accusations. The fish mechanism above sways slightly, forgotten now, still turning slowly, like it has its own patient life. In the midst of it, Draupadi stands close to Arjuna, not clinging, not trembling, watching. You can smell the sharpness of her hair oil as she turns her head, eyes scanning faces, absorbing this first taste of what it means to be one in public. Not by a gentle choice in a quiet room, but by a contest that leaves bruised egos everywhere. The brothers seize the opening the guards create. They begin to move, fast, controlled, guiding Draupadi away from the center, away from the angry ring of royalty. You go with them, pushed along by the current of bodies. You catch glimpses, Drupada's tense face, Drishtadyumna's calculating eyes, the kings shouting that this cannot stand. But the brothers do not stop. They slip out. The light changes instantly when you leave the hall, as if the outside world is simpler. Sunlight, dust, the open sky. The palace courtyard is bright and hot. The stones underfoot hold yesterday's warmth and today's promise of more. Somewhere, a conch sounds, and the note floats over rooftops, confused about whether it's calling for celebration or alarm. They move through the streets. Panchala city is alive, with the Swayamvara's overflow. Vendors shouting, children darting between carts, women leaning from balconies to catch a glimpse of the famous princess. The smell of frying sweets mixes with horse sweat and sun-baked clay. And there, right there, you see how quickly a crowd can turn. When Draupadi steps into the street with a garlanded Brahmin, heads snap around, mouths open, someone gasps her name, someone else shouts a question that no one answers. The brothers keep going. They don't march like conquerors. They walk like travelers who know the quickest path through a market. Yudhishthira leads, calm as a pilgrim. Arjuna stays slightly behind him, Draupadi beside him. Bhima brings up the rear, and you can feel the way people give him space without knowing why. There's a moment, brief, strange, when a goat tries to dart between Bhima's feet, thinks better of it, and turns around, as if suddenly remembering it has urgent business elsewhere. The city narrows into smaller lanes. The noise fades into the background hum of distant crowds. The smell changes too. Less incense, more cooking smoke, more damp earth where water has been poured to settle dust. They reach the edge of the wealthier streets and keep going, past shops, past potter's wheels, spinning in shaded doorways, past walls patched with old mud and straw. The grand Swayamvara feels suddenly far away, like a dream you had in a room full of people. At last, they stop before a potter's hut. It's simple, clay walls, a thatched roof, a doorway hung with a rough cloth curtain. A few pots sit outside, drying in the sun. A thin dog lifts its head, decides these strangers are not worth barking at, and flops back down. Inside, it's cooler. You step in with them, and the air smells of baked clay and smoke from a small cooking fire. The floor is packed earth. A single oil lamp sits ready, unlit, as if waiting for night's hush. This is where they've been living in disguise. Here, where no one expects princes. Here, where the greatest warriors in the world can sit on the ground and pretend it's normal. Kunti is inside. She's older than the others, her hair dark but threaded with a few silvers. Her eyes are sharp even when her face is calm. She has lived long enough to recognize fate when it walks through her doorway wearing ordinary clothes. The brothers enter first. Draupadi follows. For a moment, everything pauses. Even the outside world feels muffled, as if the hut has swallowed the sound. Kunti looks up. She sees her sons' faces, their strange brightness. She sees the garland around Arjuna's neck, and she understands instantly that something enormous has happened. But she hasn't seen Draupadi yet. She hasn't measured the weight of her. The brothers, breathless and a little disbelieving, tell her they have brought something back, something precious, something won. Kunti, without looking too closely, gives the kind of instruction a mother gives 5 hungry sons in a small house. Practical, automatic, the sort of words that keep a household from turning into a fight. She tells them to share what they have brought. Just that. A simple sentence, a careless sentence, a sentence that lands like a stone dropped into still water, sending ripples you can't stop. You feel it, standing there in the hut, the way the air tightens, the way the brothers freeze, not from fear of battle, but from fear of what their mother's words might mean. Kunti finally looks up fully. she sees Draupadi, the princess born of fire, standing in a potter's hut, like a flame in a clay lamp. Kunti's face changes, not to cruelty, to shock, to the sudden understanding that a mother's mouth can shape a destiny in one breath. No one moves for a heartbeat. The hut feels smaller than it did a moment ago. The walls feel closer. The oil lamp seems to watch. Outside, a cart rattles past, and the ordinary sound feels absurd against what is happening inside. Draupadi stands still. You can't tell, looking at her, whether she's furious or simply stunned. Her eyes flick from one brother to the next. 5 men, all watching their mother, all trapped by her words. Because in this family, vows are not decorations. Words spoken are not easily unspoken. Yudhishthira's face is the first to settle. He looks at Kunti with the respect of a son who has never learned to dismiss her. He looks at his brothers with the authority of an elder who carries responsibility the way others carry jewelry. Then he looks at Draupadi. And in that look, you can feel the impossible math beginning to form. 1 woman, 5 husbands. Not as a joke, not as a scandal, as a decision that will bind kingdoms. Bhima shifts his weight, the hut creaking slightly, as if the earth itself is adjusting under him. Arjuna's garland hangs heavy around his neck now, no longer just a sign of victory, but a question. Nakula and Sahadeva glance at each other, silent as ever, their faces unreadable, but their bodies tense. And Draupadi breathes in slowly, as if she's smelling the truth of her life for the first time. Clay and smoke, dust and fate, a potter's hut instead of a palace. You're there with them, close enough to hear cloth rustle, close enough to notice the fine ash still faintly clinging to Draupadi's hairline from last night's fire-born arrival. For a moment, it feels like the world is holding its breath again, just as it did when Arjuna aimed at the fish. Only now, the target isn't an eye, it's a future. And outside, the city still buzzes with the Swayamvara's aftermath. Men shouting, women whispering, Drupadas, palace full of fury and confusion. They will come looking. They will demand explanations. They will not accept a Brahmin took her and vanished. But inside this hut, something more powerful than royal anger has already spoken. A mother's sentence, a son's duty, and a princess born from fire, discovering that the world can remake itself in the smallest room with the humblest roof, on the strength of a few careless words. The oil lamp is still unlit, but it feels like the whole hut is glowing anyway. She walked out of fire into marriage. Now she must learn to live there. A few days pass, and the air itself seems to change. In the potter's hut, the smoke was low and intimate, clinging to the ceiling like a secret. But outside, the world is wide again. Open roads, hot sun, gossip traveling faster than any chariot. You can feel it the moment you step out. That thick North Indian heat already pressing against your forehead by mid-morning. The ground is hard-packed earth, gritty underfoot, and the smell of the street is a jumble. Sweet jaggery, dung fires, sharp sweat, crushed marigolds, and somewhere behind it all, the roar of a king's anger. Drupada's people come hunting explanations. Panchala's pride won't be quieted by, she went with a Brahmin. Hastinapura's spies sniff the wind. Every little courtyard seems full of ears. So the brothers do what they've learned to do since the Lakh House and the tunnel and the long wandering. They move, not like criminals, like men who know how quickly a crowd can become a net. Draupadi travels with them, and the strangeness of it never fully settles. One day, she's the prize at a royal contest. The next, she's slipping down dusty lanes, veiled, while vendors argue over lentils and boys chase runaway goats. You're walking close enough to hear the bangles at her wrist tick softly with each step, close enough to notice how her chin stays lifted, even when the street is ugly, even when someone stares too long. They reach Drupada again in time, because nothing stays hidden forever in a kingdom full of servants. And the reunion is not soft. It's a collision of pride and relief, of a father's fury and a father's helpless love. Drupada's household swells like a storm cloud. Priests, counselors, soldiers, aunties with sharp tongues. Draupadi stands in the center of it, fire-born and unblinking. The brothers are no longer Brahmins when the truth must be spoken. Masks come off the way, dust comes off, in a river, suddenly, and then you can't imagine they ever wore them. Arjuna's shoulders look different when he isn't pretending. Bhima looks even more like a walking threat, and Yudhishthira. Yudhishthira looks like someone who has already accepted consequences, whatever they are. The arrangement is made, not with joy, with inevitability. 5 husbands, 1 wife, rules laid down like boundary stones. And because rules are the only way a thing like this survives, even 1 week, the rules are made sharp. There will be a rotation. There will be separate spaces. There will be a kind of order, because without it, this would become a daily war fought with glances and silence. You can almost hear the invisible abacus clicking in some corner of fate, counting days and nights, counting who is husband and who is brother on any given sunrise. And then, like a door opening onto a different world entirely, the road turns toward Indraprastha, toward the portion of the kingdom that was handed to the brothers like a consolation prize, a forest tract, a place people talk about the way they talk about old fevers, not deadly, not glorious, just inconvenient. The journey there is long enough for your bones to learn the rhythm of travel. Chariot wheels complaining over ruts, leather straps creaking, horses tossing their heads, annoyed at the flies, the air smelling of dust, warmed by sun, and occasionally the cool blessing of a riverbank where everyone drinks and splashes their faces like tired children. At night, campfires bloom across the dark like little orange flowers. Sparks drift upward. Someone always burns the lentils a bit. Someone always insists they didn't. Bhima, with his enormous appetite and his enormous confidence, treats cooking like a battlefield. Attack the pot, conquer the hunger, move on. He can make a meal for 20 men. He can also, with the same steady hand, ruin a perfectly good sweet by deciding it. Needs more ghee, as if more is a virtue all by itself. Draupadi watches these things and learns. Not lessons carved in stone, living lessons. How to sleep with your back against a rolled blanket and still wake with dignity. How to keep your veil in place when the wind is rude. How to be surrounded by 5 men and still find yourself, sometimes startlingly alone. Because being everyone's wife is not the same as being held by anyone. When they finally reach the new land, the first sight is not a palace. It's trees, thick forest, crowded and buzzing, like the earth is keeping its own counsel. Vines, thorny undergrowth, hidden birds that laugh at you from above. The air is cooler beneath the canopy, damp with leaf shadow. The ground smells alive, mud, roots, crushed herbs. This is where they are supposed to build a kingdom. You stand there with them, and it's almost funny in the way some situations are funny only because the alternative is despair. Five princes, a princess born from fire, and a whole lot of trees that do not care. They begin anyway. Axes bite into wood. Men shout measurements. Surveyors argue. Fires burn to clear brush. The sound of work becomes a kind of steady drumbeat, hammer on stone, saw on timber, the distant crack of a falling trunk. Draupadi moves through it like a bright thread stitched into rough cloth. She is not the kind of woman who disappears into the background just because men are building. Sometimes she stands with her feet planted in the dirt and watches the line of a wall being marked. Sometimes she walks among workers with water and cloth, her bangles flashing when she gestures as if her hands are still used to commanding a court. And sometimes, when the heat is worst, when the air tastes like baked dust, she retreats to a shaded corner and lets herself breathe. Because she is building too, a life, a strange life with five shadows. The rotation begins. It sounds neat when you say it quickly, but living it feels like learning a dance where the steps change depending on who is watching. Each brother has his own space, and Draupadi moves. Some days she is in Yudhishthira's rooms. Those rooms always feel calmer, even when there is chaos outside. The scent is sandalwood and clean cloth, like someone is constantly trying to keep the world from becoming too loud. Yudhishthira is not a man who chases her through corridors. He doesn't need to. He carries authority the way a mountain carries height, quietly, without effort. With him, Draupadi learns a particular kind of silence. Not the silence of fear, the silence of two people listening to the same distant sound, the call of a peacock, the splash of water in a courtyard fountain, the steady scribble of a clerk's reed pen. You can feel it when you stand near them, a shared stillness. And yet, even in that stillness, she feels the edges of herself. Because Yudhishthira's calm can be like a cool stone floor, merciful in heat, but hard if you kneel too long. Other days, she is with Bhima, and the air changes completely. Bhima's spaces smell like food, always toasted grain, spices, warm ghee, sometimes a faint smoky tang because he has wandered in from the kitchens, grinning like a boy who stole something sweet. With Bhima, Draupadi laughs more than she expects to. Not polite laughter, the kind that surprises you out of your own chest. Because Bhima treats palace life like it's a silly game designed by people who hate joy. He is loyal to his brother's rules, but he also finds tiny ways to mock the stiffness of it all. An exaggerated bow to some overly serious attendant, a dramatic complaint about having to wear clean clothes when battle dust is more honest. And he is the one who looks at Draupadi like she is not fragile, not breakable, not a ceremonial object, like she is fire that can burn back. Some days she is with Arjuna. Arjuna's rooms feel like a place where the wind lives. Bows hung with care, quivers stored like sacred things, the faint smell of oil rubbed into leather, and sometimes the sharp bite of metal being cleaned. With Arjuna, there is energy that doesn't always know where to sit. He is attentive, yes, but his mind is always half in motion, training, planning, watching the horizon. Sometimes Draupadi catches him staring at nothing, and she knows he is seeing a target only he can see. With him, she feels chosen, not by arrangement, by something in the blood and breath. It would be easy to lean too hard into that feeling. So she learns to balance it, the way you balance a pot of water on your head. Steady, careful, eyes forward. Then there are Nakula and Sahadeva. The twins move through the palace like a matched pair of careful flames. Nakula's world is cleanliness, order, beauty that looks effortless. His rooms smell of fresh washed cloth and jasmine oil. Even the way he sits looks composed, as if he is aware the world is watching. He can make Draupadi feel exquisite just by adjusting a piece of jewelry, just by the gentleness of his hands when he helps her with the clasp. But his gentleness has pride hidden under it, like a blade under silk. Sahadeva is quieter. His presence is like a shaded grove, cool, thoughtful, not for everyone. He watches more than he speaks. His rooms smell of ink and old wood, and the faint sharpness of medicinal herbs. With Sahadeva, Draupadi feels seen in a different way. Not admired, understood. Sometimes that is a comfort. Sometimes it is unsettling, because being understood means your secrets don't stay yours. As the months turn, you feel it in your bones. This marriage is not one marriage. It is five different worlds, five different ways of being touched, spoken to, waited for, and Draupadi is the bridge between them, walking back and forth over a river that never stops moving. There are rules to keep peace. One brother must not intrude when another is with her. It's treated like law, not a suggestion, and it makes the palace feel like a place full of invisible doors. You can be walking down a corridor and suddenly a servant will quietly redirect you, eyes lowered, as if you almost stepped into a sacred fire. Some days it's almost comical. A messenger arrives breathless with urgent news, then freezes because he has run to the wrong set of rooms on the wrong day, and the wrong brother is there. He bows so fast, his forehead nearly meets the floor. He backs away like a crab, stammering apologies into the air. Later, someone will mutter that the kingdom has conquered rivals and tamed forests, but still can't teach a messenger to count days on a knotted cord. The palace learns, servants learn, even the birds learn, it feels like, perching on the right roofs at the right times. And Draupadi learns most of all, how to carry tenderness without letting it spill into jealousy, how to accept gifts without letting them become contests, how to keep her own heart from becoming a battlefield. Then, as if the gods decide the stage needs a proper backdrop, the miracle of Indraprastha truly begins. The forest that once pressed in like a threat becomes a city. Indraprastha, a name that tastes like ambition. New streets appear like lines drawn in sand. Markets bloom, noisy and fragrant. Wells are dug. Courtyards are paved with stone that stays cool even in heat. You walk through it, and the sensations stack up. Fresh-cut timber, wet clay bricks drying in sun, the sharp, pleasant stink of lime plaster. At dawn, you hear conches and bells and the low chant of priests. By midday, it's the sound of bargaining and laughter and quarrels. By night, it's lamps, thousands of little flames, like the city has learned to mimic the stars. And then comes the palace, not an ordinary palace, not something built only by men with tools and sweat. Maya arrives, an architect with eyes that seem to measure space the way musicians measure notes. He owes a debt, a life spared, and debts like that don't get repaid with ordinary stone. The palace rises in a way that makes you feel you're watching a dream decide to become solid. Pillars that catch light and throw it back in colors. Walls that seem to hold sunsets inside them. Floors so polished you can see your own face looking up at you. Startled. There are pools. There are places that look like pools. There are paths that look like air. And the first time you walk inside, your body doesn't trust your eyes. You step carefully, the way you do on a riverbank, where mud might swallow your foot. You smell lotus and cool water and stone warmed by sun all at once. Somewhere, mechanical birds sing from jeweled branches, and for a moment you look up, half expecting feathers. The palace plays with perception like a mischievous child. A pillar might be solid, or it might be an illusion of crystal light. A floor might be water, or it might be stone pretending to be water. If you're proud, it will embarrass you. If you're humble, it will still embarrass you, but you'll laugh sooner. Draupadi walks through these halls, and you can sense the strange weight of it. She has gone from a potter's hut to a palace that makes reality wobble. And yet, even here, even in beauty, her life doesn't become simple. If anything, beauty makes the edges sharper, because everyone can see it, and everyone will talk. Indraprastha begins to attract visitors. Kings come with gifts and guarded smiles. Old allies arrive with blessings, and inevitably, the cousins from Hastinapura. When they come, the air changes. It's subtle at first. More guards at gates, more servants whispering, attention in the way people fold cloth, as if the fabric itself might betray them. You can smell it in the corridors, incense laid on thicker than usual, like sweetness can hide unease. When Duryodhana arrives, it is not with thunder, it is with a kind of tightness. He walks with the confidence of someone who believes the world owes him. His eyes sweep the palace the way a hungry man sweeps a feast. He smiles at the right times. He praises what he must praise. But his gaze lingers, too long on the jewels, too long on the cool floors, too long on the effortless wealth that seems to have grown from the Pandavas' forest share like a miracle. And you can feel, even if no one says it aloud, that he is measuring not just the palace, their happiness, their legitimacy, their glow. The palace, of course, does what it was built to do. It confuses him, a place that looks like water but isn't, a place that is water but looks like stone. And the moment he missteps, robes clutched too soon, foot landing where he didn't expect, there is a flicker of laughter somewhere. Not cruel laughter, not always. Sometimes it's the kind you can't stop because the sight is too absurd. A prince, so certain of his own grandeur, fooled by a flaw. But pride doesn't care whether the laughter is cruel. It only cares that it exists. Draupadi sees it. She sees the way Duryodhana's jaw tightens, the way his eyes sharpen, the way he pretends not to notice the ripple of amusement. She doesn't chase him with insults. She doesn't need to. The palace has already done the work, and jealousy is a seed that grows well in silence. Still, life moves on. Inside this shimmering, dangerous beauty, Draupadi becomes a mother. The first time it happens, the palace seems to quiet around her. Not because the city stops, because she does. You can almost feel the shift, her body becoming a place where the future gathers itself. Servants move softer, lamps burn steadier. The scent of herbs thickens in her rooms, bitter and green. One son comes to her by Yudhishthira, a boy with the steadiness of a small flame. Then another by Bhima, loud-lunged and sturdy, as if he arrived already prepared to argue with the world. Another by Arjuna, eyes bright, restless even in childhood. Then Nakula's son, beautiful in the way morning is beautiful. Then Sahadeva's son, watchful, quiet, studying faces the way his father does. 5 sons, 5 little lives running through courtyards, their feet slapping cool stone, their laughter ricocheting off pillars. You stand in the palace gardens and watch them play. You smell crushed grass and warm milk and the sweet rot of fallen fruit. You hear anklets jingling on a nursemaid's feet as she chases after them, scolding and pleading and failing completely. And in those moments, it almost feels like the strange arrangement has softened into something like peace. Almost. But peace in a world like this is never a wall. It's a cloth curtain, one gust and it flutters. Because Draupadi still moves through 5 marriages. Because nights still end with her, walking away from one set of rooms toward another, carrying herself like a queen while feeling sometimes like a guest. Because there are mornings when she wakes alone, the bed cool beside her, and she listens to the palace wake up without her. The conch, the bell, the distant shout of a guard calling a change of watch. She learns what loneliness feels like when you are surrounded by servants. She learns what it feels like when love must be scheduled. And she learns something else too, something she never asked for, but recognizes anyway. That her sons are not just sons. They are pieces on a board the world is already setting. You can feel it when visitors look at them too carefully, when a warrior's gaze lingers on a child's shoulders as if imagining armor, when a courtier smiles and says blessings that sound a little like predictions. The palace glows, the city thrives, and far away in Hastinapura, other eyes watch this glow and feel it as an insult. Draupadi stands one evening on a terrace, the sky turning the color of ripe mango. Below, Indraprastha hums, cooking fires, lamps, the low music of someone's flute floating up from a courtyard. A warm wind brings the scent of jasmine and river water. Her hair is loose, heavy down her back, and for a moment, she just lets the breeze move it. You're beside her, looking out over the city they made from forest. 5 husbands, each somewhere in this vast palace complex, each living his own strand of this shared life. 5 sons, sleeping now, finally, after exhausting the day. And somewhere beyond the horizon, the other palace, the older throne, the cousins who smile too tightly, the envy that doesn't need to shout yet. The night deepens, oil lamps tremble behind carved screens. The palace of illusions holds its breath, shimmering quietly as if it already knows how easily a misstep becomes a wound. And in the warm dark, as Indraprastha settles into sleep, a future begins to lean, closer, soft-footed, patient, already on its way. 13 years of peace. Then an invitation arrives. It comes with polished couriers and ceremonial smiles, with gold-sealed words that pretend to be friendly. The messenger's hands are soft from palace life, but his eyes keep flicking around Indraprastha, measuring the glow. You can smell the sandalwood on his clothes before he even bows. Yudhishthira takes the invitation like a man taking a cup he knows is too strong for him. Dice have always had that hold on him, like a sweet that turns bitter the moment it touches your tongue. The palace is bright that day, too bright. Sunlight skips across Maya's floors, and pools where pools aren't, water where water isn't. Somewhere a peacock calls, bold as a courtier. Draupadi watches her husbands read and reread the same lines, their brows tightening, their mouths going quiet. And you're right there with her, feeling the way a household's air changes when danger enters as a letter. They prepare as if for a festival. That's how these things work. You don't march to a trap wearing the face of someone who knows it's a trap. You dress in silk. You oil your hair. You put on jewelry that clicks softly like reassuring lies. The chariots are readied. Horses stamp, impatient and glossy, their breath warm in the morning. The wheels creak as if they're complaining already. Servants fold cloth, tie bundles, whisper lists, so many small hands trying to hold back something enormous with neat knots. Draupadi steps into her chariot, and the leather seat is sun warmed. She feels it through the layers of her garment. The wind carries the river's damp sweetness, and for a moment it almost feels like travel, ordinary travel, the kind that ends with laughter and new stories. Then the banner poles sway. Then Indraprastha recedes, and ahead, like a tooth you can't stop touching with your tongue, there is Hastinapura. The road is long enough for doubt to stretch out and get comfortable. At night, they stop under trees that smell of dust and neem, and the fires crackle low. Bhima eats like a man preparing for either a feast or a fight, and it's hard not to love him for that simple honesty. Arjuna checks the straps on everything twice because he's Arjuna. Nakula and Sahadeva speak quietly to the attendants, smoothing problems before they grow teeth. Yudhishthira is the quietest. He keeps the invitation close, like it might change if he stares at it hard enough. Draupadi watches him from across the firelight, seeing the same thing she has seen before, a man who can face armies but trembles at the sound of dice in a closed room. You sit with that discomfort beside her, listening to the insects sing as if the world has no opinion. When they finally reach Hastinapura, the city greets them with practiced warmth. Garlands, conches, blessings that land on your shoulders like heavy shawls. The streets smell of cow dung plaster and frying sweets. Incense curls from doorways. Dust rises under 100 running feet, rushing to see the famous brothers return. Some faces are genuinely joyful, some are cautious, some are smiling the way a knife smiles, polite, sharp, waiting. The palace gates loom. Inside, cool stone replaces the sun's heat. Your sandals scrape over marble that has heard too many secrets. The air is thick with key lamp smoke and old perfume, the kind that lingers in a hall long after the person has left. Draupadi walks with her head high. You can feel how many eyes follow her. Men who once watched her win a Swayamvara, who once had their pride broken by a Brahmin with a bow. Women who glance at her jewelry and then glance away, because jealousy is a quiet creature here. They're ushered toward the assembly hall. And the hall itself, Hastinapura's great Sabha, doesn't shimmer like Indraprastha's illusion palace. It doesn't need to. This hall is power without tricks. Pillars rise like stern teachers. The floor is polished, smooth from countless sandals. You hear the soft rustle of silk, the clink of armlets, the low throat-clearing cough of elders who want everyone to remember they are still important. At the far end sits Dhritarashtra, blind eyes, a king's posture, a father's weakness wrapped in royal cloth. Beside him, Gandhari, veiled as always, her restraint like an iron band around her life. And not far, Duryodhana. He looks calm. That's the unsettling part, the way he settles into his seat as if he has already watched this day happen in his mind 100 times. Karna sits near him, bright as a blade, and Shakuni sits like a man arriving at his favorite pastime. You can almost hear the dice before they appear. There's a hospitality performance first, a little sweetness, a little ceremony, the kind of politeness that makes your skin itch. Vidura tries to stop it. He does it the way he always does, standing straight, voice steady, saying the kind of truth that makes a room go uncomfortable. He warns of what games do to kings. He warns of what envy does to families. He warns, and you can feel the warning hit the hall like a cold draft. No one likes a cold draft. They endure it the way you endure a fly buzzing too close to your ear, with irritation, with a wish for it to go away. Dhritarashtra listens. Dhritarashtra hesitates. Then he lets his son have his way, because that is how this palace breathes. In and out, always making space for Duryodhana. Yudhishthira is invited to play, and he accepts, not because he wants to, not because he's foolish in the ordinary way. He accepts because refusal in a royal hall can be treated like insult, and insult is another word for war. He sits. The dice board is placed. You can see the way the polished surface catches lamplight, like a pond holding moonlight. Shakuni's hands look relaxed, almost tender, as he cups the dice. Those dice have traveled with him through a lifetime of practice, through every crooked corner of his mind. Yudhishthira's fingers hover, then settle. Draupadi is not seated beside him. This is not the space for queens, not the way they run it here. She watches from behind screens and through messengers shifting reports. She hears it first as rumor, whispers skittering like mice through corridors. The game has begun. In the hall, the sound is small but sharp. Click, a little roll, a little laughter. Then another click. You're standing at the edge of the assembly, close enough to smell the oil on men's hair and the faint sourness of their nervous sweat. Close enough to hear Shakuni's soft exhale each time he throws, like he's humming to himself. Yudhishthira wagers. It starts with wealth, gold, jewels, fine cloth, herds, chariots, the sort of things a king can lose and still tell himself he's still a king. Shakuni wins, again and again, and the hall begins to lean forward. There's a particular hunger in a crowd, watching someone fall. Part pity, part excitement, part relief that it isn't them. You hear bracelets clink as people shift, hear murmured bets whispered under breath as if they're watching a wrestling match. Yudhishthira's face tightens. Not anger, not panic. Something worse, determination, as if he can wrestle the universe back into fairness with one more throw. He stakes Indraprastha, stakes the very city they made from wilderness. You can almost smell that city in your mind, the jasmine on Draupadi's terrace, the river wind, the humming courtyards. Shakuni wins, and the hall exhales. It's a long, satisfied sound, like a snake settling deeper into warm sand. Now it becomes cruel. Now the game stops pretending. Yudhishthira's brothers are named like possessions. First one, then the next. Men who have held bows that shook the sky, now reduced to words in a wager. Each time the dice fall, it's as if the air itself flinches. Click. Another brother gone. Click. Another. Bhima's jaw is clenched so hard you can see the muscle jumping. Arjuna's eyes go distant, the way they do when he's trying not to reach for violence too early. Nakula and Sahadeva stand still, because stillness is the only disguise for fury they're allowed right now. Yudhishthira continues, until he stakes himself. It happens quietly, a king wagering his own freedom, and losing it. You feel it then, something in the hall shifting. A deep, satisfied shift. The kind of shift a predator makes when it has finally pinned what it wanted. A man who has lost himself should be done. A man who has lost himself should have nothing left to give. But the dice are still there. Shakuni's fingers are still ready. Duryodhana's eyes are still bright. And then the name you've been dreading arrives in the air, spoken as if it belongs to the game. Draupadi. It takes a moment to reach her. A messenger comes running, breathless, face pale. The words come out tangled, like threads snagged on thorns. Draupadi understands anyway. Her stomach drops. It's a physical thing, like stepping onto a stair that isn't there. She stands in her chamber, and the room is suddenly too quiet. The perfume she wore that morning, jasmine and something warm, turns sour in her throat. Servants freeze, hands hovering over combs and cloth. Outside, you can hear the distant noise of the assembly hall, a low rumble like thunder behind hills. Draupadi asks for clarification because the mind refuses to accept the shape of such a thing at first. The messenger repeats himself. Yudhishthira has staked her and lost. For a heartbeat, her vision narrows. The carved pillars of her chamber seem too close. The silk curtains breathe in and out with a slight draft. Her bangles feel heavy, suddenly ridiculous, like decoration on a prisoner. She is in her season. There is a vulnerability in that, a private discomfort, a softness that should be protected, not paraded. She wears a single cloth, simple for those days, hair loosened and unadorned. And they want her, dragged into a hall of men. You're right beside her as she steadies her breath. She doesn't weep. Not yet. She gathers herself the way you gather a shawl in a sudden wind, tight around the shoulders, refusing to let the cold in. Word is sent back. She will not come. Not like this. Not for this. In the assembly hall, Duryodhana responds the way men like him always respond when a woman says no. He sends Dushasana, and Dushasana comes. You hear him before you see him, the heavy stomp of a man who enjoys being feared. He pushes past attendants like they're curtains, not people. He smells of sweat and ghee and power. Draupadi steps backward, but the chamber is not a battlefield. It's a room. There are walls. There is furniture. There is nowhere to vanish. Dushasana grabs her by the hair. It's as humiliating as it is painful. Not the sharp pain of injury, but the slow, burning insult of being handled like property. Her scalp stings. Her head jerks back. Her feet stumble on the smooth floor. And he drags her through corridors, through startled servants who press themselves against walls, through the palace's cool stone passages, where every echo seems to repeat the shame. You can hear the scrape of her anklets, the rough pull of hair, the sudden hush that spreads as people realize what they're witnessing. Draupadi's breath comes fast. Her hand clutches the edge of her cloth, holding it tight at her shoulder. That single cloth is suddenly everything. Dignity, decency, a thin line between her and the worst kind of public triumph. They shove her into the sabha. The assembly hall turns its full attention on her. Hundreds of eyes, some curious, some gleeful, some horrified, many empty. She stands there, dragged and disheveled, hair pulled loose, face flushed with the strain of being hauled like a sack of grain. The hall smells of warm bodies and old incense, of spiced betel and pride. She looks for help, not from strangers, from elders, from the ones who taught dharma, who taught law, who taught kings how to behave. Bhishma sits heavy in his seat, the great patriarch, his face lined like old parchment. Drona is there, the teacher, eyes lowered as if the floor might suddenly become fascinating. Kripa, others, men who have corrected princes for speaking rudely at dinner. Draupadi's voice comes out steady anyway. It carries. She does not beg. She asks what any person with a mind would ask, and the question slices the air so cleanly The hall goes still. One brief line, sharp as a bell. If he lost himself first, was I one or not? That's it. No poetry, no screaming. Just a legal question. A simple question. And you can feel the whole room try to dodge it. Because if they answer it honestly, the game collapses. The humiliation collapses. Duryodhana's victory becomes theft, not triumph. If they answer it honestly, they have to act. And acting has consequences. Silence spreads. It spreads like oil on water, slow, widening, impossible to gather back into one place. You hear a cough die halfway. You hear someone's bracelet stop moving. Even the lamps seem to flicker quieter. Bhishma shifts. He looks as if he's carrying an entire mountain of vows on his back, and none of them allow him to stand up when he should. His eyes do not meet Draupadi's. Drona's fingers tighten around his robe. Karna watches with a cold sort of interest, as if this is a contest he intends to win by cruelty. Dhritarashtra sits above it all, blind and sweating, his mouth slightly open, as if he can hear the truth, but can't bear to name it. Draupadi stands alone in the center of the hall, and you feel the loneliness of that like a physical weight. The kind of loneliness that makes a crowded room feel emptier than a forest. At last, one voice rises, not an elder's, a young man, Vikarna, one of Dhritarashtra's sons, a prince without the full poison of his brothers. He speaks up, steady enough to surprise even himself. He points out what everyone can see. A man who has lost himself cannot stake another. He points out the crookedness, the intoxication of the game, the wrongness. For a moment, it's like someone has cracked a window in a suffocating room. Air rushes in. Heads turn. Some men murmur approval, startled by their own relief at hearing someone say it out loud. Then Karna rises, and the temperature in the hall changes again. The way it changes when a storm decides it's done waiting. Karna's words are sharp and ugly, flung with precision. He ridicules Vikarna, shames him for daring to speak against the winning side. Then he turns that contempt on Draupadi. He calls her names that stick like mud. He uses her marriage, her strange, fate-bound marriage, as a weapon against her. He strips her of respect with language alone, because language is often the first blade drawn in courts, and Duryodhana watches, pleased. He leans forward. He does something so small, so childish, so devastatingly clear. He pats his thigh. A gesture like a slap, a gesture that says, the humiliation is not enough, unless it becomes spectacle. The hall makes a sound, not quite a gasp, not quite a laugh, something in between, something that tastes like shame. Dushasana steps forward again. His hands reach for Draupadi's cloth. This is the moment. You can feel it in your own chest, that tightening panic, that instinct to look away, and the fury at yourself for wanting to look away. Draupadi's fingers clamp down on the edge of her sari. Her knuckles go white. She calls out for help, not from the men in the hall, not from kings or elders or teachers who have already proven they will not move. She calls for Krishna. And it is not a polite prayer. It's the kind of desperate call that comes from the bottom of the well, scraped raw by need. The lamps flicker, the air shivers, Dushasana tugs, and the cloth does something impossible. It keeps coming. He pulls, and instead of ending, it spills into his hands like water that refuses to run out. Fabric after fabric, fold after fold, soft and endless, falling in colors that make no sense for a woman dragged in shame. Bright reds, deep blues, gold-edged whites. The pile grows at his feet like a mockery. You're standing close enough to hear the rasp of cloth sliding, the quickening of his breath as effort turns to confusion. He pulls harder. The hall watches, mesmerized, as the attempted humiliation becomes a different kind of spectacle, one that turns back on the man trying to create it. His arms start to tremble. Sweat shines on his forehead. The cloth does not end. It's not loud. It's not fiery. It's simply inexhaustible, a quiet, relentless protection. Draupadi stands within it, like the eye of a storm, breath shaking but body covered, dignity held by something beyond the reach of a man's hands. At last, Dushasana falters. He stumbles back, exhausted, humiliated in front of everyone. The hall is no longer hungry. Now it's uneasy, because they've all seen it. A sign, a warning, a line drawn by the divine itself, right there on the marble floor of Hastinapura. Dhritarashtra's fear finally wakes up. Not noble fear, not moral clarity, the kind of fear that comes when the universe makes itself impossible to ignore. He speaks quickly then, voice urgent, trying to cover the mess with royal authority, the way you throw a rug over spilled oil. He offers Draupadi boons. Anything, he says, within reason. Draupadi does not ask for jewelry. She does not ask for revenge. She does not ask for a palace or a throne. She asks for her husband's freedom. One by one, a boon for Yudhishthira, so he is no longer enslaved by the throw of dice. A boon for Bhima, so his rage can remain contained behind law a little longer. A boon for Arjuna, so the bowman who will someday shake this world is not chained in a gambling hall. Nakula, Sahadeva, each name is spoken like a rope being cut. Dhritarashtra grants it. The hall breathes again. For a moment, the nightmare loosens its grip. Then Dhritarashtra offers another boon, almost desperate to make the danger pass. Draupadi asks for what was taken, the kingdom returned, their wealth restored, their honor acknowledged. Dhritarashtra agrees. You can feel the relief ripple outward, even among those who hate the Pandavas, because nobody truly wants to live in a world where gods intervene in the assembly hall. Nobody wants that kind of attention. The Pandavas are freed. They gather Draupadi and leave. For a few breaths of time, it seems like the worst has passed. And then Duryodhana, still burning with that special kind of envy that doesn't care about consequences, refuses to let the ending land. He demands another game. He insists on it with the stubbornness of a spoiled child and the authority of a prince no one has ever truly stopped. Shakuni smiles again, already tasting the click of dice on board. Dhritarashtra, who could end it with one word, does not end it. He allows it. Again. Yudhishthira is called back, and you feel that sick lurch in the stomach, because you know the shape of this place now. You know what the hall does to him. He sits again. The dice roll again. It's quicker this time, like a man being pushed downstairs. The wager is exile, 12 years in the forest, 1 year hidden among people, unseen. If they are discovered in that last year, the whole punishment begins again. 12 more years, like a wheel that never stops turning. The hall feels colder now. Even the lamps seem tired of burning for this. Shakuni throws. Yudhishthira loses. Of course he loses. The hall releases a sound, like a beast satisfied. Duryodhana's face gleams with triumph that doesn't look like joy, so much as hunger finally fed. Draupadi stands very still. Her hair is still loose from being dragged, strands sticking to her neck. Her scalp still aches where fingers yanked. Her body feels both heavy and strangely distant, as if she is watching herself from above. Bhima's rage is a living thing beside her. You can almost hear it breathing. He does not strike, not here, not now, but he swears it in the only way a man like Bhima can swear, with his whole future. He fixes his eyes on Dushasana, and you understand, without needing every word, that this insult will not be forgotten. Arjuna's hands clench and unclench, like he's practicing restraint the way other men practice archery. Yudhishthira looks as if he has been hollowed out, not because he lost a kingdom, because his own hands did it. They leave the hall, not escorted like honored guests, not chased like criminals. They leave the way a storm leaves a town, silently, with damage behind it and more damage ahead. Outside, Hastinapura's air feels sharper. The sun is lower now, turning the city's dust golden. Vendors call out, trying to sell snacks and garlands to passers-by who have no idea the world just cracked open inside the palace. Cows amble lazily, tails flicking. Life continues with infuriating calm. You walk with Draupadi through the palace gates. Every step away from the hall feels unreal, like waking from a fever dream and still feeling the sweat on your skin. At the edge of the city, the road stretches out, forestward, exileward. Servants bring what little they're allowed to take: simple bundles, water skins, a few weapons hidden under cloth. The great kings of Indraprastha reduced to travelers again. Draupadi touches her hair. It hangs loose down her back, heavy and dark, tangled from hands that had no right to touch her. She does not bind it, not yet, not after what happened. She steps onto the road as the first evening wind rises. It smells of dry earth and distant trees, of smoke from cooking fires fading behind them. Hastinapura's walls fall away. The palace disappears from view, but the assembly hall stays. It stays in the mind like a bell that will not stop ringing. A woman dragged into a room full of powerful men. A question that should have been answered. A silence that chose comfort over justice. And now the forest waits, wide, indifferent, ready to swallow kings and queens alike, while behind them, in the heart of a palace, the dice still sit quietly on their board, as if nothing has happened at all. The dice have spoken. Now comes the wandering. The road outside Hastinapura is hard-packed and pale, and it throws the heat right back into your face. Dust creeps into your mouth with every breath, dry as old flour. The city noise fades behind you. Vendors, bells, gossip, until all you hear is the steady shuffle of feet and the occasional clink of a water skin against a hip. Draupadi walks without looking back. Her hair is still loose, still heavy, still a dark river down her back, catching burrs and grit like it's collecting every insult the world can offer. You're close enough to see how her shoulders hold themselves, straight, almost too straight, like if she relaxes even once, the whole sky might fall on her. The five brothers are quiet. Even Bhima, who usually fills space like thunder, has gone oddly still. The wind off the fields lifts the edge of his cloth and then drops it again, as if the breeze itself is trying not to disturb him. And when the first line of trees finally rises in the distance, low and green and indifferent, you feel it. This is a different kind of kingdom. No throne, no guard, no one to call out, "Make way." Only the forest, waiting like an old animal that has watched 1,000 kings come and go. The first camp is clumsy. A few sticks, a few stones, a smoky fire that won't behave. Someone's water pot tipped over, and now there's mud where there shouldn't be mud. In Indraprastha, 100 hands would have appeared to fix it before you even noticed. Here, the night just comes anyway. You smell damp leaves and old bark warming near the fire. The smoke is sharp in your eyes. Somewhere beyond the circle of light, insects buzz like tiny drums, and a night bird calls out once, then again, as if it's checking whether you heard it the first time. Draupadi sits on a folded cloth, not a cushioned seat, not a carved bench, just cloth over earth. And when she finally takes a breath that isn't held like a weapon, you realize how long you've been holding yours too. Days become a rhythm. Wake, gather wood, fetch water, grind grain, cook what can be cooked, wash what can be washed, sleep lightly, because the forest does not care that you once had palace walls. You see Draupadi's hands change. In the palace, her palms were soft, scented with oils, stained faintly by henna. Now there's flour dust in every crease. Now there are small nicks, nothing dramatic, just the kind of tiny injuries that happen when you're alive and doing your own work. The sound of the grinding stone becomes familiar, a low, gritty music. Round and round, grain turning to meal, patience turning into something you can swallow. The first time the dough sticks to her fingers, Bhima watches with the helpless expression of a man who can wrestle lions but can't argue with flour. He tries to help. He makes it worse. The lump becomes a strange, heroic boulder that looks ready to go into battle. Draupadi doesn't laugh, not at first, but later, when the flatbread comes off the fire, looking like it has survived a small war, she breaks a piece and eats it anyway, like she's daring the universe to comment. You're sitting near the edge of the camp when the moon rises over the trees, pale and quiet. The air smells of smoke and wild jasmine. The brothers are there, shadows around a fire. Draupadi's hair lies over her shoulder, loose even in sleep, like a vow that refuses to lie down. And every so often, the memory of that hall tries to return. The polished floor, the silence, the way the world pretended not to know what it knew. In the forest, those memories have nowhere to hide. Seasons pass. The forest changes its face the way a dancer changes moods. 1 month, the heat presses down like a hand on the back of your neck. Another month, the monsoon arrives and the world becomes a constant dripping, 1,000 leaves shaking water into your hair. You feel the relief of rain on skin that has been too hot for too long. You smell wet earth, dark, rich, almost sweet. The river swells, loud and brown, carrying branches and flower petals and the occasional stunned frog that didn't plan on traveling today. Sages come and go. Hermitages appear like little islands of order, smoke rising straight from cooking fires, deer standing calmly near people, the soft mutter of prayers woven into the morning air. You might think peace lives here, but peace, in this exile, is a thin cloth. One afternoon, when the brothers have gone out and Draupadi stays behind, the sound of wheels approaches. Chariots don't belong in this quiet. The horses snort and stamp, irritated by flies and the narrow forest path. You smell sweat, animal sweat, leather, and the faint sharpness of metal warmed by sun. A king has come strolling into their hardship, as if hardship is a market stall. Jayadratha. He sees Draupadi and stares too long, the way certain men stare when they think the world is theirs by right. He offers her escape in the voice of someone offering a gift, as if leaving her husband's would be as simple as stepping onto a chariot. Draupadi refuses, not politely, not carefully. She refuses the way fire refuses to become water. Jayadratha reaches anyway. And you feel it, your stomach dropping, the forest air suddenly too thin, as his men seize her and pull her toward the chariot. Her feet scrape the earth, her bangles clack once, hard, like a warning bell. Then the forest explodes with returning footsteps. Bhima comes first, moving so fast, the leaves shake behind him. Arjuna is close, eyes narrowed. Nakula and Sahadeva fan out like hunting cats. Yudhishthira arrives with that terrible calm of his, the calm that always shows up right before consequences. Jayadratha's confidence breaks. He tries to flee. The chase is short. The humiliation is thorough. Draupadi stands there afterward, breath unsteady, hair still loose, and you can see it in her face. This wasn't new. It was only repeating. Palace or forest, men still think exile makes a woman available. Bhima wants to end it right there in the dirt. No speeches. Arjuna pulls him back. Yudhishthira insists on restraint. So Jayadratha is spared, barely, after being marked with shame. He is forced to bow his head low enough that even the grass seems to judge him. Draupadi watches her husbands choose mercy again. Her expression doesn't soften. It hardens into something quieter. Later, when the fire is low and the food is simple, lentils, flat bread, whatever the day allowed, she reminds them of what has not changed. Her voice is steady as a vow. She touches her unbound hair, and you hear the one line that lives in her like a blade. My hair is still unbound. She doesn't say more than that. She doesn't have to. The forest understands promises. It's made of them. Seed to tree, rain to river, day to night. Time moves. Sometimes it moves gently, like a cow ambling down a path. Sometimes it kicks you in the ribs. One day, guests arrive. A famous sage, Durvasa, with a crowd of followers behind him, hungry from travel and carrying the heat of their discipline like an invisible fire. Hospitality is not optional in this world, not for kings, not for exiles, not for anyone who wants to keep the gods from noticing their failures. But the pot is empty. Draupadi has already eaten. The miraculous vessel that feeds them has its own rules, and today the rules are sharp as thorns. You can feel the panic rising, hot and sour in the throat, because Durvasa's displeasure isn't a simple scolding. It's the kind of wrath that becomes a curse and then becomes a ruin. Draupadi's hands tremble once, just once, as she scrapes the vessel, praying for anything. One grain clings there, stubborn as a child, refusing to leave home. And in that strange way, the world has, Krishna appears, not with fanfare, not with drums, just suddenly present, as if he's been leaning against a tree the whole time, waiting for you to notice him. He takes that single grain. He eats it, and the air shifts. Somewhere out there, Durvasa and his followers feel full before they even sit down. Their hunger vanishes like a dream evaporating at sunrise. They leave without demanding anything more, as if their stomachs have been gently tricked into contentment. When the danger passes, Draupadi exhales so deeply it feels like the whole forest breathes with her. The years continue. Arjuna goes away for long stretches, chasing weapons and blessings and the kind of power that doesn't fit into a normal human hand. He returns with a different stillness, like someone who has stood too close to lightning and learned respect. Bhima goes on errands that begin as errands and end as legends. Once, Draupadi asks for flowers, celestial lotuses, of course, because why ask for ordinary comfort when the world has already stolen everything ordinary? Bhima goes stomping into the wilderness to get them, grumbling the whole way like a man sent to buy spices and somehow ending up wrestling fate itself. He comes back with lotuses and a new story. An enormous monkey sprawled across a path like he owned the mountain. Bhima tried to shove the tail aside. He couldn't move it, not an inch, not with all that famous strength. Even you can't help a quiet smile at that. Imagine Bhima, beaten by a tail. The monkey, of course, was no ordinary monkey. Hanuman revealed himself, older brother to Bhima, in a strange divine way, and promised help when war finally arrived. Not yet. That comes in time. For now, the forest remains their classroom, their waiting room, their slow furnace, and Draupadi remains its brightest ember. Sometimes the exile looks almost peaceful. A riverbank at dawn, the light turning the water copper, birds calling, the smell of crushed grass underfoot, a small pot bubbling with rice, steam rising in soft curls. And then, without warning, the memory returns. The dice, the hall, the hand in her hair. She lives with that memory the way you live with a scar you can't stop touching. She refuses to let it fade. 12 years pass like that, long enough for a child to become almost grown, long enough for rage to become steady instead of wild. Then comes the 13th year, the most dangerous year, not because of arrows, because of eyes. Because if anyone recognizes them, even once, the exile begins again from the start. 12 more forest years, 12 more monsoons, 12 more nights with smoke in your hair and grief under your tongue. So they strip away everything recognizable. No royal marks, no familiar weapons, no proud names. Before they enter the kingdom of Matsya, they go to a lonely place near a cremation ground. The air there is wrong in a way you feel in your teeth. Ash, old smoke, a silence that seems to press on the ears. A tall Sami tree stands there, its branches high and watchful. The brothers wrap their weapons, bows, swords, quivers, tight in cloth, like smuggling their own identities into the sky. They hoist the bundle up into the branches where rain can't reach. And then, to keep people away, they hang something else there. A still form, a smell that will make shepherds wrinkle their noses and turn their cattle elsewhere. When curious cowherds come too close, the brothers tell a lie so bold it almost becomes art. They say it is their mother, impossibly old, hung there by custom. People accept it, because people accept what's convenient to accept. Then they walk toward Virata's city with empty hands and careful faces. You can feel how strange it is, stepping into a place with walls and markets again. The sound hits you first. Vendors calling, bangles chiming, carts rattling over stone, temple bells ringing like the city is announcing itself to the sky. The smell is thicker than the forest. Ghee smoke, fried snacks, sweating horses, jasmine garlands, and that sharp tang of human crowd. They enter one by one. Yudhishthira becomes Kanka, a quiet courtier with dice tucked under his cloth, smiling as if losing kingdoms is just a hobby that got out of hand. Bhima becomes Vallabha, a cook, which is almost funny until you remember who he is. The man could uproot a tree, and now he's supervising pots and arguing with stubborn lentils. Nakula goes to the stables, Sahadeva goes to the cattle pens. Arjuna takes the boldest disguise of all. He becomes Vrihanala, a dance teacher in the women's quarters, wearing ornaments that make the gods blink twice. People look at him and decide they understand him, and then they stop looking any deeper. And Draupadi becomes Sairandri, a waiting woman, a servant. When she approaches Queen Sudeshna, she wears a single dark garment, not filthy, but plain enough to hide in. Her beauty still leaks through it, the way sunlight leaks through thin cloth. She ties her hair up in a rough braid, but even then, it looks like a captured storm. Sudeshna sees her and immediately knows the truth that no one wants to say aloud. This is not a maid. Fear flickers behind the queen's interest. A woman like Draupadi in a palace is a spark in a room full of oil. So, Draupadi makes her terms. She claims she has powerful husbands, Gandharvas, unseen protectors. She warns that any man who treats her as easy prey will meet a sudden end, and she insists she will not be made to do the most degrading tasks. Sudeshna agrees, half because she believes, half because she doesn't want to test it. So Draupadi is placed inside the palace, close enough to danger to smell it, close enough to power to watch it eat itself. You walk those corridors with her in your mind, cool stone under bare feet, the constant hush of fabric moving, the soft clink of jewelry, oil lamps burning with that warm, sweet ghee scent that clings to hair. In the women's quarters, laughter rises and falls like birds taking off. Somewhere, a bracelet drops and someone giggles too loudly. Somewhere else, a baby cries and is soothed with murmured songs. And through it all, Draupadi moves like a woman carrying a secret knife. Then Kichaka sees her, commander of Virata's forces, Sudeshna's brother, a man who walks like rules were made for other people. His gaze lands on Draupadi and doesn't leave. He begins with flattery, because men like him always believe flattery is a key that opens any door. When flattery fails, he offers gifts. When gifts fail, he offers threats dressed up as promises. Draupadi refuses every version of him. She tries to stay near other women, near safety, near the queen. She lowers her eyes at the right moments. She keeps her hands busy so no one can accuse her of inviting attention. None of it matters, because Kichaka wants what he wants, and the palace has learned to make room for powerful men's wants. One day, Sudeshna calls Draupadi and orders her to take wine to Kichaka. You feel the coldness of that moment, not anger, not shouting, just a small command, spoken like it's nothing. Draupadi pleads with the queen without raising her voice too high, because even desperation has to be measured in palaces. She reminds Sudeshna of her warning, of her unseen husbands, of the danger. Sudeshna sends her anyway, so Draupadi goes. She carries the wine. The corridor feels longer than it should. The oil lamps seem to watch. The air is thick with perfume and heat, and the faint smell of metal from guard weapons outside. Kichaka grabs her, and when she tries to pull away, he drags her through the hall like he's displaying his right to do so. The assembly is full. Men look up, women stiffen and look down. Someone coughs, someone adjusts a shawl, someone pretends they didn't see clearly. Virata sits there, king on his seat, and does nothing useful. His mouth moves in excuse, something about confusion, about not seeing properly. You can feel Bhima nearby, in the guise of a cook, holding his rage like a pot held too close to flame. One wrong move, and everything spills. And if everything spills, the exile begins again. So Draupadi is forced to swallow humiliation in public, again, like it's her portion of daily bread. Later, she finds Bhima, not in a dramatic scene, not with trumpets, in a quiet corner where servants pass by carrying linens, where the walls have ears. She tells him what happened. She tells him what she needs. And Bhima listens with the kind of stillness that is more frightening than shouting. That night, Draupadi sends word to Kichaka, a meeting, a promise, wrapped in just enough sweetness to bait him. She chooses the dancing hall, empty at night, wide and shadowed, where the floor is smooth and the curtains breathe with the slightest breeze. You can almost see it, the lamplight trembling, the dust floating in it like tiny spirits, the distant sound of a guard's footsteps fading down a corridor. Kichaka arrives hungry, with confidence, thinking the world has finally corrected itself in his favor. Bhima is waiting in the dark. What happens is quick, not a long, messy struggle, a sudden storm in a closed room, a few heavy sounds, then silence. By morning, the palace wakes to news that Kichaka has been found fallen, broken by something no one wants to name. Draupadi stands among the whispering women and tells them calmly that her Gandharva husbands did it, and the palace, so eager to believe convenient things, believes her, not because they are brave, because fear can make even liars sound holy. Kichaka's brothers burn with rage. They decide to punish Draupadi the way cruel men always choose to punish, not by argument, not by law, but by making her suffer publicly. They seize her and drag her toward a funeral pyre, intending to throw her into fire beside what remains of their brother. The air is thick with smoke and chanting. The heat presses against your face as you imagine it, the flames snapping and licking upward like impatient tongues. Draupadi struggles, but she is one woman, surrounded by many men. And then Bhima comes again, like night, coming fast. In the confusion, in the shadows, those brothers fall one by one, overcome by the same unseen force that took Kichaka. By morning, the story has settled into place. Gandharvas. Everyone nods. Everyone avoids meeting Draupadi's eyes for too long. The palace becomes careful around her, the way people become careful around a cobra they cannot afford to anger. Time moves toward the end of the year, but Duryodhana's suspicion moves too, like a rat sniffing grain. He sends an attack against Virata's wealth, his cattle, hoping to flush out whatever great warriors might be hiding in this kingdom. The city trembles with the news. Men run through streets carrying spears. The clang of armor rings out. Horses scream in their stables. Dust rises as chariots roll out like a metal tide. Virata rides out with his forces to meet one raid. Another raid comes from the north, greater, heavier, led by the most famous names of Hastinapura. And inside the palace, the young prince Uttara boasts loudly that he can handle it if someone will just drive his chariot. The women, watching from behind curtains, suggest Vrihanala, the dance teacher, because rumor says he once drove a great warrior's chariot. So Arjuna, disguised, becomes charioteer. Draupadi doesn't go to the battlefield. She stays where women are expected to stay, inside walls, listening to distant echoes. But you can feel her attention stretched taut as a bowstring. Every sound from outside becomes a message, a shout, a horn, the low thunder of many feet. Then, from far away, a conch blast rolls over the city like a wave. It's a sound that doesn't belong to Matsya. It belongs to something older, something unmistakable. Arjuna has retrieved his weapons from the Sami tree. The disguise is cracking. The day passes in a strange, suspended way. Women gather in clusters. Servants whisper. Lamps burn even in daylight because no one thinks to snuff them. By evening, the news arrives like rain after drought. The northern attackers have been turned back. Not just turned back, shamed, stripped of pride and order, sent fleeing with their finery missing and their confidence torn. Uttara returns, pretending bravery, pretending victory was his, and the city lets him keep the lie because cities love lies that make them feel safe. But in the quiet places, everyone knows. The Pandavas were here. The year is over, and just like that, all the careful hiding, 13 years of swallowing, enduring, waiting, reaches the edge of its final breath. When the brothers reveal themselves to Virata, the king swings between delight and embarrassment, like a man realizing the gods have been eating at his table while he complained about the cooking. He offers alliance. He offers his daughter. Arjuna refuses her for himself because he has been her teacher in disguise. And even in these tangled lives, there are lines that still matter. He offers her instead to his son, Abhimanyu. The marriage is arranged like a bridge being built, while everyone pretends they're only discussing flowers. Draupadi watches all of it, not with girlish excitement, with a steady gaze, like someone watching the final knot being tied on a net. Because alliances are good, kingdoms are good, but what she has carried for 13 years is still carried. Her hair is still unbound, and the memory of that hall still rings like a bell that refuses to go quiet. That night in Virata's city, the air is cooler than it has been in weeks. The wind moves through courtyards and rustles the leaves of palace trees. Oil lamps flicker, throwing soft light over stone floors worn smooth by generations of feet. You can almost hear Draupadi's breathing in the dark, slow, controlled, awake, 13 years behind her, a war ahead, and somewhere far to the north, the dice that began all this sit silent on their board, waiting for the next hand to be played. The exile ends the way a long fever ends, not with relief, with the first hard breath of something worse. Dawn creeps into Virata's city, pale and careful, like it's not sure it's welcome. The courtyards are still cool. The stone holds night's last mercy. Somewhere, a conch shell tests its voice, one long note that turns your spine into a listening instrument. And in that half-light, plans become marching. Messengers come and go like startled birds. Horses are watered, brushed, whispered to. Armor is laid out and checked again, because men will do anything to feel prepared for the unpreparable. Draupadi watches the bustle without joining it. She's done her share of disguises. Now she stands in plain cloth, hair loose down her back, and the looseness itself feels like a vow walking around on 2 feet. You can feel it in the air even before the first chariot wheel turns. That thick, waiting tension, like rain that won't fall, like a drumbeat you can't hear, yet, but your chest already keeps time. They try for peace first. They have to. Envoys ride. Polite words are offered like flowers laid on a blade. Kingdoms are measured, promised, withheld. Gifts are sent and returned untouched. And then, just like that, the polite words run out. The earth around Kurukshetra becomes a city made of tents. Canvas everywhere, rippling under hot wind. Poles lashed with rope. Cooking fires sending up thin threads of smoke. Lines of soldiers moving like rivers with no water. Just dust and metal and breath. You're there, outside the women's quarters, and the smell hits you. Ghee and boiled grain, sweat, crushed grass, horse dung, drying as the sun. Someone is frying something spiced, and for a moment, your stomach believes in ordinary life again. Then, a conch answers another conch far off, and ordinary life steps back. Draupadi's place is not out there where the standards sway. Her place is here, among the people who wait. The waiting has its own rhythm. It is quieter than battle, but it gnaws longer. Women bring water. Old attendants fold cloth again and again, as if neatness could hold the world together. Kunti sits with the stillness of a woman who has seen too many sons walk away. Even laughter happens sometimes because human bodies cannot stay clenched forever. One maid whispers that the camp is so enormous you could get lost just trying to find the latrine. Another complains that warriors talk about fate like philosophers, but still argue about whose turn it is to sharpen the knives. Small complaints, silly complaints. They help, they don't help. Outside, the days begin to stack. The first day comes with heat that presses down like a hand. The ground trembles with chariot wheels. When the wind turns, it carries a strange scent, dust warmed by sun, and something sharper underneath that you don't name. News arrives in bursts. A runner, chest heaving, eyes too wide. A charioteer with ash on his cheek. A soldier who can't stop blinking, as if the light out there is too bright to be real. They bow, they speak, they swallow, they speak again. And Draupadi listens the way a person listens to a verdict. Sometimes the news is almost ordinary if you squint. A commander has fallen back, a line held, a banner was captured and raised again. Someone's chariot broke and he had to run like a common man, cursing his luck and his carpenter. But then the names begin. Not just warriors, not just men. Names that sit inside the family like bones. You feel it when a messenger says her father's name, Drupada, without saying it straight. The runner circles it first, like a man afraid of stepping on a snake. Drupada has fallen. The king who asked the fire for children. The king who looked at a newborn daughter and saw not softness, but purpose. Draupadi doesn't wail, not yet. Her face tightens and her fingers curl into the edge of her shawl, so hard the cloth creases. Outside, the camp keeps moving. Someone laughs too loudly near a cooking fire and then stops mid-sound as if ashamed of having a throat. You can feel the absurdity of it all. The world still requires food, still requires water, still requires someone to chase a goat that has escaped its rope. And in the middle of all that, kings fall. Days keep coming. The sun rises, the sun sets. The wind changes and brings different smells. Sometimes the air is so dry your lips crack. Sometimes the sky clouds over. And for a few blessed minutes, you can pretend the whole world has paused to breathe. In the women's quarters, time becomes a string of small actions. A cup lifted, a cloth folded, a prayer murmured without anyone making a show of it. You sit near the tent flap sometimes and listen for the distant roar. It comes and goes like surf. When it rises, every muscle in your body tries to stand up, and Draupadi's hair stays loose. It is impossible, really, how long hair can feel when it's not bound. It brushes your arms. It tangles in the heat. It becomes a living reminder. Every time she moves, it moves with her. Dark as monsoon clouds, as if it refuses to be forgotten even for a moment. On one of the days, no one can remember later if it was the 10th or the 12th. Something shifts. It is not just the sound outside. It is the way the messengers approach. They come slower. Their faces carry something heavier than fear. The air seems to thicken around them, as if even the wind is listening. A man kneels at the edge of the tent space. He has dust on his lashes. His hands shake once, then steady, like he has chosen steadiness because the alternative is falling apart. He says Bhima has kept his vow. He says Dushasana has fallen. And he adds, because vows in this family are never simple, that Bhima did the terrible thing he promised in that hall long ago. He took the vow into his own mouth. He made it real. The words land in the tent like a stone dropped in water. No one speaks. Even the servants stop fidgeting. Even the little brass bell hanging from a rope seems to hush its faint clink. You look at Draupadi. This is what she asked the universe for, isn't it? This is what she carried through the forest, through Virata's kitchens, through Kichaka's hands, through every night of pretending. Justice shaped like vengeance. And yet her face does not brighten. It hardens, because a vow fulfilled is not a sunrise. It is a door closing. She nods once, slow. Then she reaches for oil, a small bowl, a simple thing, the kind of thing that would sit in any woman's space, war or no war. Her hands are steady. She draws her hair forward, all of it, thick and heavy, like the weight of 13 years gathered into one rope. You can almost feel the texture of it in your own fingers, cool in the shade, warmed at the ends by sun, smelling faintly of smoke and sandalwood from old days when she was still a queen in a palace. She oils it, smooths it, separates it with careful fingers. No one helps her unless she asks. This is hers, and then she binds it, not quickly, not dramatically, the way a woman ties up her life before stepping out to do what must be done. When the knot is finished, her face looks smaller somehow, as if one part of her has finally stopped shouting. And that silence should feel like relief. It doesn't, because the war does not pause for a woman's hair. Outside, conches still call, chariots still roll, the earth still takes the weight of marching men without complaint. More news comes. Her brother falls, Drishtadyumna, the one carved from fire with a single purpose, the one who carried his father's revenge like an arrow already nocked. Someone says it softly, as if softness could change it. Draupadi closes her eyes for a moment, long enough to feel like a lifetime. When she opens them again, they are dry. You can sense the effort it takes to keep them dry, like holding a lid down on a boiling pot. And then there is Abhimanyu. Even though he is not her son by blood, he has been in her tent, in her arms, laughing with that bright, reckless warmth young men carry as if it's armor. He has called her mother in the way a son calls a woman who fed him and scolded him and prayed for him. The message comes, twisted with shame and grief. The men stumble over it. The boy went in. He did not come out. Draupadi does not collapse. Not yet. But her hand goes to her bound hair, touching the knot as if checking it's still real. As if she needs a proof that at least one vow has ended cleanly. Night after night, the camp tries to sleep. Sometimes it almost manages. You lie on thin mats. The ground holds heat for hours. Somewhere, a horse stamps and snorts. Somewhere, a soldier murmurs in a dream and then falls silent. In the women's quarters, lamps are shaded. Whispered prayers rise and fade. The smell of oil and smoke clings to fabric. A baby cries once, then quiets, because even babies seem to sense that this is not a place to demand too much. Draupadi sleeps in fragments. When she wakes, she listens, not for footsteps, for the feeling of disaster approaching. And then it comes. Not as battle news, as something worse. It happens on a night that feels like any other at first. The sky is dark, heavy, with no stars. The wind is restless, pushing dust under tent flaps, making the hanging cloth breathe in and out like a tired chest. A guard outside shifts his weight. You hear the soft jingle of metal. Someone coughs, trying to keep it small. Inside, The lamps burn low. The women have finally dozed. Even grief has to blink sometimes. Then the camp shudders with a strange stir. Not the roar of daytime battle. This is muffled, creeping, wrong. Footsteps that hurry and then stop. Voices that hiss and then vanish. A runner arrives before dawn, stumbling like his legs don't remember how to be legs. He looks at the women's quarters like a man looking at a temple he has defiled. His mouth opens. No sound comes out at first. When words finally form, they come out broken. Ashwatthama has done it. Not out there, under flags and conchis, in the sleeping places, in the dark. He has struck the tent where Draupadi's 5 sons slept. 5 boys. 5 faces that each carried a different father's line, and yet all looked like they belonged to her. They are gone. The words sit in the air, refusing to be believed. For a heartbeat, nobody understands. Not really. Your mind tries to make it smaller, to turn it into something that can fit inside a human chest. But it doesn't shrink. It spreads. Draupadi's body goes very still. So still, you think she might not breathe. Then her breath comes, sharp and quiet, like someone whose ribs have become too tight. Her eyes do not fill with tears. They go empty. And that emptiness is more frightening than sobbing, because sobbing would be a human response. This is like watching a lamp go out. You can taste the bitterness of the air in your mouth, dust, smoke, the faint sourness of fear. Somewhere outside, a rooster crows, foolishly announcing morning as if the world is normal. No one thanks it. Draupadi rises, not like a queen, not like a servant, like a mother who has been told there is no longer a reason to be careful. She steps out of the women's quarters, and the early light catches her bound hair. That knot now looks less like closure and more like a lock on a door that has trapped her inside. Men try to stop her, not with force, with pleading, with hands raised, palms open, saying she should not see. But she has seen enough, and she walks anyway. You walk with her because what else do you do? Your feet follow like they belong to her grief now. The camp is waking into horror. Soldiers stand in clumps, faces grey. Some stare at nothing. Some look at the ground as if the earth has personally betrayed them. The smell of last night's cooking fires still hangs around, obscene in its ordinary warmth. As the sun lifts, it reveals the field beyond. Kurukshetra. It looks peaceful from a distance, almost. A broad stretch of land under a pale sky. Birds circling high, making slow decisions. But when you get closer, the peace breaks. The ground is churned and scuffed, as if giants dragged their feet across it. Broken chariot paths lie like discarded toys. Strands of cloth flap from spears stuck into the earth. A banner, once proud, lies crumpled, its bright dye dulled by dust. The wind carries the scent of trampled grass and the faint metallic tang of too many weapons left out overnight. Draupadi does not cover her face. She steps onto that field like she has been walking toward it for 13 years. And now that she is here, she is not satisfied, because the field does not give back what it takes. She searches for her sons, not with screaming, with the terrible focus of a person looking for a needle in a burned house. You move among the fallen. You try not to look too long at any one face, but the faces insist. Men who were laughing yesterday, boys whose mustaches barely decided to grow, great warriors who once seemed like mountains, now reduced to stillness. Names pass through your mind like prayer beads slipping through fingers, and somewhere among all of them are 5 boys, slept beside each other like pups in a litter, trusting the night to be a wall. Draupadi walks faster, then slower. Her breath changes when she thinks she sees one. She kneels. It is not him. She rises again without a sound. The sun climbs higher, and the heat arrives like punishment. Sweat gathers at your back. Dust sticks to your ankles. Your throat dries out, and every swallow feels like scraping. A vulture lands in the distance and then hops away, offended by your approach. Flies buzz in lazy circles over the field, as if even they are tired. Somewhere far off, a conch sounds again, maybe from habit, maybe because someone forgot. There are things you cannot call back. Draupadi finds the first, a small hand, a familiar bracelet. A face turned slightly, as if he was about to speak, and then didn't. Her knees fold beneath her. This time, there is no restraint, but there is no wild display either. Her grief is too deep for drama. It comes out as a quiet sound, low in her throat, like the first crack in a dam. Then she finds the second, then the third. And with each one, something inside her seems to empty out further, until she is walking through her own body like it is a house after everyone has left. By the time she reaches the last, the sun is harsh overhead, and the field has begun to shimmer at the edges. Heat waves make the distance wobble. The world looks unreal, like Maya's palace used to look, except now the illusion is not water where there is stone. Now the illusion is meaning where there is only loss. You stand beside her. You don't know where to put your hands. You don't know where to put your eyes. There are a million places to look, and every one of them hurts. Draupadi sits with her sons at last, all found, all gathered. This is what the war has done. It has kept the vow. It has broken the family. It has fed the promise and starved the future. Somewhere behind you, men begin to move again. Orders are muttered. Fires are rebuilt. Someone starts counting supplies, because even after the end of the world, someone always counts supplies. The women's quarters will need water. The wounded will need shade. The living will need food, because living is stubborn. Draupadi does not move for a long time. Her bound hair rests against her back, neat and heavy, a finished thing. 13 years she kept it loose as a weapon made of silence. Now it is tied, and still the war is not satisfied. The wind rises briefly and carries the smell of smoke across the field. It brushes your face like a hot cloth, then passes. Birds wheel overhead, patient as time. Draupadi finally stands. She looks out over Kurukshetra, over banners fallen, over chariots splintered, over the wide earth that has taken everyone without choosing sides. Her eyes do not blaze now. They are quieter than you expect. Not forgiving, not soft, just quiet, like a fire that has burned down to ash and heat. And when she turns back toward the tents, the camp seems smaller. The sounds are muffled, as if the world has stuffed cotton in its own ears. You follow her, step by step, dust rising with each footfall, then settling again. Behind you, the field lies under the sun, holding its silence, the way it held the thunder, without protest, without opinion, without ever giving anything back. Night comes back to the camp, like a soft hand on a fevered forehead. The shouting is gone. The urgent running is gone. Even the conch shells have finally fallen quiet. What you hear now is smaller. A pot settling on coals. A woman rinsing cloth in a brass basin. The low, steady hiss of oil in a lamp. The air still smells of smoke, yes, but also of ghee and crushed marigolds, as if the world is trying to remember what prayer used to feel like. And in that quiet, your mind goes back to her. So after all of that, after the fire and the husbands and the question and the war, what were the ancient storytellers trying to tell us? They brought Draupadi into the world in the most impossible way on purpose. Not from a womb, not with lullabies and a naming ceremony. From flame, and you can almost feel it again, can't you? The heat licking the stone walls, the chant rising and falling, the sudden hush when the fire changed and became a doorway. That beginning isn't just spectacle, it's a promise. Some souls arrive already forged, not because they're spared hardship, but because hardship is part of what they're made to carry. Draupadi steps out of fire, and the world immediately asks her to fit into a shape it already decided for her. Quiet wife, prize bride, grateful queen. But fire doesn't come out of a ritual to become furniture. Fire comes out to burn away what is false. Then comes the marriage, the strangest arithmetic any heart has ever been asked to do. 5 husbands, 5 different shadows of love, 5 different expectations, and 1 woman expected to keep everyone steady. It would be easy to treat that like a curiosity, like some old royal oddity. But the ache of it is the point. Because Dharma, the duty, the role, the order of things, doesn't always arrive as a clean, comfortable instruction. Sometimes Dharma is an arrangement that feels impossible, and you live inside it anyway. You can feel it in the small details of Indraprastha too. The cool stone under bare feet, the rustle of silk in separate corridors, the way even laughter has to be scheduled around who is with her tonight. And still, she makes a life. The storytellers don't give you a perfect romance. They give you a woman learning to be whole while divided by design, and they slip you a gentler truth inside that sharp one. Love isn't always reduced by being shared. Sometimes it becomes more complicated, more human, more real. Then the dice, that terrible little sound, ivory or gold or bone hitting the floor, becomes louder than armies. The center of Draupadi's story is not the miracle of endless cloth. It's not even the humiliation itself, as unbearable as it is. It's the question she asks while the entire hall freezes. If Yudhishthira had already lost himself, how could he stake her? It's a legal question, yes, but it's also the moment someone finally dares to challenge the shape of the world. You can picture the scene without effort. The pillars, the polished floor, the elders staring at anything except her face. A court full of men famous for wisdom, suddenly helpless. That silence is one of the hardest teachings in the whole Mahabharata. Wisdom without courage can turn into decoration. A mind can know what is right and still sit there, unmoving, while wrong happens out loud. The story doesn't let you forget that, not ever. And it doesn't let you hide behind the comfort of everyone was confused. Because Draupadi isn't confused, she's clear. She stands there and forces the world to hear itself. Then exile comes, and with it, a different kind of fire. No sacrificial blaze, no shining hall, just sunburn and dust and the rough scratch of bark cloth, the smell of wet earth after sudden rain, smoke from cooking fires that never quite leaves your hair. You walk with her through it, and you see something steadier than rage. Dignity, not pride, not performance. Dignity as a decision. Because humiliation is what the world does to you. Dignity is what you refuse to surrender. She becomes a servant in Virata's palace, and still she does not become small inside herself. She learns restraint so sharp it could cut stone. And when danger presses too close, when hands reach where they should never reach, she does not quietly accept it as her fate. She moves, she plans, she calls on the strength around her, and the threat is ended. Not with a courtroom, not with an elder clearing his throat and finally remembering justice, with action. And that too is part of the teaching. Dharma isn't only patience, Dharma also has teeth. Karma here isn't a simple little tally. It's not a neat reward system where good people receive garlands and bad people receive storms. Karma is the net. One act tugs 100 lives. One cowardly silence in an assembly hall becomes a war that swallows sons and fathers and teachers and friends. Draupadi's question pulls on that net so hard it finally snaps. And then the war comes. 18 days that feel like a lifetime squeezed into dust and trumpet blasts. But the teaching doesn't end with victory. It ends with cost, because vengeance is a hunger that promises satisfaction and rarely tells the truth about what it will consume. Draupadi gets the moment she held in her body for 13 years. Her hair, unbound for so long, is finally tied. A promise completed. And then the messengers keep arriving. Not with triumph, but with names. A father gone, a brother gone, 5 sons gone in one night. Their lives cut short before their adulthood had even fully opened. The story is brave enough to say this plainly. You can receive everything you demanded from the world and still lose everything you loved. That doesn't mean justice is meaningless. It means justice is not the same as comfort. It means even when Dharma is restored, the earth remembers what it cost to restore it. And through all of it, Draupadi stands as Shakti, power itself. Not power as domination, power as refusal. Refusal to accept that a woman can be wagered. Refusal to accept that elders can hide behind tradition while a person is being broken in front of them. Refusal to accept that the universe is arranged so that the strong may do as they please, and the wounded must simply endure. You've been with her long enough now to feel the difference. She isn't only wrath, she isn't only suffering, she is the force that makes the world answerable. And the sweetest, quietest closure the storytellers offer is this. Even when no one answers you in the moment, asking the right question matters. It plants something. It haunts the unjust. It calls the brave out of hiding. It keeps Dharma from becoming a dead word on someone's tongue. So when you think of Draupadi, let it be simple. Fire made her, yes, but fire didn't only make her fierce. Fire made her clear. The camp is quiet now. The lamps tremble in the warm night air. Somewhere, a last ember collapses into ash with a soft sigh, and the darkness folds over it gently, like a shawl laid across tired shoulders. And in that hush, Draupadi's life settles into the heart the way a flame settles into a lamp. Steady, unblinking, still giving light. The war is over. The kingdom is won. Now comes the long walk home and beyond. It doesn't begin with trumpets. It begins with cloth being folded, jewels set aside, a king's heavy rings left on a tray like they were always too tight anyway. In the courtyards of Hastinapura, the morning smells like damp stone and old incense. Ghee lamps burn down to their last stubborn puddles. Even the peacocks sound tired. And then bark cloth, rough against skin that once knew only silk. You can almost feel it yourself, that scratchy weave, that strange lightness when a life of ceremony drops away. They step out together, the 5 brothers, and Draupadi with them. No palanquin, no canopy, just feet on dust and the slow, steady pace of people who have seen enough. A dog pads after them, quiet as a shadow, not owned, not chased away, just there, keeping faithful time. Days pass like beads sliding on a string. The road changes under your soles. Packed earth, then gravel, then stone that warms in the sun and cools fast at dusk. Wind brings the scent of wild jasmine from somewhere you can't see. At night, the sky opens like a dark river full of stars, and the campfire crackles with that soft, dry sound that makes your eyelids heavy. You're walking with them now. You're close enough to hear the gentle rasp of bark cloth, the faint clink of a water pot, the dog's nails tapping stone. They don't talk much. What could they say that hasn't already been said by dice and exile and 18 days of thunder? The world grows bigger as they move. Rivers widen, forests deepen, mountains rise like old thoughts that never left. And Mount Meru waits ahead, not as a threat, not as a prize, but as a last horizon. The air thins. It tastes different up here, cleaner, sharper, almost metallic when you breathe deep. The wind is cooler too, brushing sweat off your skin before it can sting. Their footsteps sound smaller now, swallowed by open space. Then the first faltering comes. Sahadeva, quiet, watchful Sahadeva, slips into stillness as simply as a lamp going out when the oil is gone. One moment he's there, keeping pace, and the next, the path continues without him. Bhima turns, shocked, as if strength itself has been insulted. He asks with his whole body why they aren't stopping, why they aren't gathering him up, why the world is allowed to do this. Yudhishthira keeps walking, not because he doesn't care, because this journey is made of a vow that doesn't turn around. Not today, not for anyone. The wind passes over the stones with a low, steady hush, like the breath of something ancient listening. And then, not long after, it's Draupadi. It doesn't happen with drama. No cry, no grand gesture, just a small stumble, a knee to rock, and the great queen, born of fire, breaker of silence, settles to the earth as if she's finally allowed to rest. You can see her hair, not wild now, not unbound in fury, bound, braided, kept close, the way she promised herself it would be once the long accounting was done. Even the braid looks heavy, dark against the pale dust. Bhima's breath catches. He can't help it. He asks again, why her? Why now? After everything? Yudhishthira answers without turning back, voice low and steady, and the one sharp line lands like a pebble dropped into deep water. She loved Arjuna more. That's all. As if the heart is a ledger, as if love must be measured with careful hands. Draupadi lies where she fell, the wind moving lightly over her bark cloth, the mountain's shadow touching her like a cool palm. The dog pauses and looks back once, ears lifting, then follows Yudhishthira again. Upward, always upward. The path narrows, stone gives way to harsher stone. The sun feels closer, but weaker, bright light without warmth. Their mouths dry quickly, breath turns thin and visible in the morning, then disappears by noon. One by one, the brothers falter too, each in his own time, each claimed by something quiet inside him that finally loosens its grip on the world. Yudhishthira does not stop. He does not look back. He walks as if he's been walking since the first dice rolled, since the first oath was sworn, since the first ember flared in Drupada's sacrificial pit, and somewhere behind him, on that long, impossible route, Draupadi remains, not abandoned like an old possession, left like a lamp set down after a vigil, still sacred, even in silence. Later, much later, Her name will travel on mouths and prayers, in sabhas where elders clear their throats and avoid a woman's eyes, in courtyards where someone is told to endure, to be quiet, to accept, in temples where the lamps burn steady and the smoke of incense curls upward, carrying questions into the dark rafters. You can almost hear it if you listen with the kind of tired attention that comes right before sleep. That question, the one she asked when everyone powerful pretended not to understand. Was she one or not? The mountains don't answer. The winds don't answer. The world, as always, takes its time. But the question stays alive, soft, persistent, like fire that doesn't destroy, only lights. And far below those high, cold paths, night settles over India again. A single lamp is lit somewhere. Oil, wick, flame. A room goes quiet, and in that quiet, the silence of the ages spreads, slowly, carefully, around a question that still refuses to burn out.